Welcome to Oye Dimelo Cinema Club Documentary Edition. Today's pick comes from me, Don Dino, and my other guests slash hosts are JP. We got Steve Des, and later on we'll have Michaela. So for the pick, I'm originally from Paraguay, South America, so I thought I'd share a documentary from my country. It's called Landfill Harmonic. It's a documentary, came out in around 2015, and that's about a landfill, the largest landfill in Paraguay called Cateura. And a guy there started a music school for or class for the kids that live in the dump in the landfill to try and give students and kids something other than having to just work in the landfill every day. um, that's something that for me is really important. Any chance that I can shine a light to something from my country or from my background. Even when I lived in Paraguay, we did some what do you call it? It's not extracurricular activity, but community service, where my school, we would go and do a program with one of the elementary schools in Cateura to try and make sure that they had like breakfast or an afternoon snack, or just to make sure that kids are able to have food and stuff. So to me, that's why I picked this film. And for initial thought, it was extremely powerful. And I don't know if that's just because I'm from Paraguay and I haven't been back there in a long time. And it brought a lot of memories back. So it was a very, very hard watch for me. So yeah, I want to hear the initial thoughts of what you thought, JP. Or Steve.
No, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, okay. I think we lost JP. So yeah.
Yeah. I think JP had to go to the bathroom real quick. And my initial thought of this documentary was, this is absolutely amazing. I was like, I can't believe I haven't even heard of this, because of the amount of success. I mean, we're gonna talk about deeper that in the later, but like just the amount of success they've had, and it never really crossed my path. And it's a extremely good documentary. Wish the only thing that I wish, because this is so good, I legit watched it twice. Like, that's how good this is. And the only thing I wish is that at the beginning, just at the beginning, they will add a little bit more about the just the overall, not just the living, the day-to-day, I guess, of like them actually living there. Because at least to me, it felt, especially the second time watching it, I did notice that it felt like you get the establishing of like who they are, where they from, and then boom, skyrockets to success, and it just goes. And I would have appreciated even more if they would have just added a little bit more in the early stages of things, because it's extremely important to focus just the amount of like day-to-day struggles and things that they go through. Because even to me, I'm like, when I see stuff like that, I'm like, yo, I was never poor. Like, these people are legit. Like, the reason they're even creating these instruments is because they got to use their ingenuity, because of the way they're living. It's not a regular way to live whatsoever. So you got to make normality out of that situation. And kudos to the one dude that put all this stuff together. With the one dad too that was actually making the instruments.
Oh, that the
Because
guy making the instruments was not even a dad. It was just one of the guys working in the landfill.
Oh, wow.
There was a dad that was very involved, but that was one of the big things was the guy that was making the instruments. He was just, someone that worked there in the landfill, and by work there was, scavenging in the landfill for any sort of recyclable stuff that then they would separate and, and sell and get for money for it. So that's why it's very impressive. Also, I think I jumped over it because I got a little emotional even just opening up about it. But the whole point is the person that starts this musical school or classes, they didn't have enough instruments. There was so much interest in having the kids take up a music class that they ran out of instruments for everyone. So they decided to make instruments from trash that they found in the landfill. And yeah, and since then it's kind of blown up in that sense. I will jump real quick. I agree. I feel the documentary is a little rough in terms of storytelling because I agree. And I think in part, I think I figured it out. So in the documentary, they even talked about how they had like a trailer that came out that was like 5 minutes long when they first start showing the clips of the 60 minutes and all these other clips, and so they barely used that footage in the full length documentary, and I think you missed some of the initial um, storytelling or world building, if you will, because they didn't use any of that footage. So I do think that's the only thing that, like you, I kind of wish that they focused a little bit more at the beginning to just flush out, if you will, the families or the people involved in it a little bit more. And I can, the documentary kind of like what the instruments are extremely a rough cut. I don't think it was the best audio and all that, but hey, the fact that they were able to get this story out, I think is just, you know, phenomenal. But yeah, I see that Michaela is there, so I'll let JP and Michaela share their initial thoughts.
I hated it. I don't people, and I don't like trash. Nah, I'm just asking. Nah, like it was it's weird because like yeah, the cut was kind of weird, but I think it was because and it's pretty weird because like it kind of was the filmmaker's fault because it was a trailer for this film that we watched, and that ultimately affected how this movie was gonna go because that little short snippet it literally made them a viral hit, and if anything, like because of this movie, we got to see like they actually ended up touring around the world. So in a weird way, it's the movie's fault that we didn't get to learn more because the movie made them a hit before the movie even came out. So the film was very short. It's very somewhat simple, and I think that's literally
Did we lose JP?
I think so. Because you know what I like? That you have a banner, a little ticker on the bottom. Because I was like, it was just zoomed in on JP and Michaela. And I was like, oh, did I look? Did I lose it? And then I'm like, oh no, the ticker is still going. So I know that I'm still receiving feed.
yeah.
So
I think
hey, you're back.
that was on our end, so my bad. But I guess to try to finish up what I said before we got cut off was that all we needed to know was the perseverance of the teacher, the lengths he was willing to go for his students and for their craft, and also just seeing like the students actually, how much how much their love of music like overcame where they came from. I would have liked to know like a bit more of like the struggles and the history of the place because there was moments where like I couldn't tell like okay, are they literally living in a landfill, or the landfill just happened to be adjacent to the village, because even the riverbanks that goes through the town, you could see that it almost looks like there's layers upon layers in the embankment of trash. So it's like, are they literally living on trash right now, or is that just how the rivers look like at the moment? So like, I wish that we could have had more backstory, but the film literally became like how they became a hit and how like music is basically universal. And I think that's where the movie decided to go in, and that's okay. I liked it.
I think it's a good documentary. It shows you what you need to see. I I feel like I need to disagree with you on like the whole universal music theme. I think that was just something they threw in at the end to try to figure out what their film was about.
Mm-hmm.
Because like at the beginning, I think they really did want to just focus on the teacher, and I think that's what they should have done, is focus on the teacher and the program. But unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, it's one of those things where it's like when you're doing such a intensive project where it involves so many people in like such an intimate way, I think it's really hard to like really encapsulate how that affects everybody involved. And it doesn't help that like in that area of like where they are at, I mean, it's just so changeable, like with the whole flood. Like last year, it was on fire. Like just last year.
Yeah, so you looked it up. I was going to bring that up. That was a huge fire, and it destroyed a bunch. Not in the exact location, but also that landfill. I think for years already they were trying to close it down because it's like in a flood. It's like it was set up like basically in flooding area. And it's overgrown, it's been over capacity. And so there has been talks for years that they were going to open a new one or make sure to stop using that one. And clearly that hasn't happened. And you could see right after the flood, it's like, how do you clean all that trash? And so people burn trash, and that can easily create, fires also in certain locations. They had a lot going on. You mentioned, were you guys gonna finish or?
No.
Okay. The other thing I noticed, so this, I remember seeing that original clip back in like 2011 or something like that, and maybe even 2010. And so it took like 5 years for this documentary, I think, to come out. And I think you're right. The filmmaker. Oh, there's a dog barking outside. I'm okay. I'm gonna try and go. So the issue, I think, did become that they got so recognized that the filmmaker at what point, like, what do I do? Right? Like, it's really cool, the Megadeth guy, like all this international kind of thing. Like, what story should I tell? Because even at the very beginning, I don't know if the documentary even started because of the music program or the guy that was working, because he went to the music professor actually was working a different program in the landfill. And he talks of, and again, he talks about it at the very, very little at the beginning, and that can be overseen real quickly. But he started a different program at the landfill that was about having to do more with like conservation and like recyclables and stuff like that. And then he noticed that there a bunch of kids were there, and that these kids were pretty much working in the landfills as well. And then he was like, hey, maybe I should start a music class for the kids. Because then he even talks about it later on, that he says, sadly, the reason that I went to Cateura, what I started was a failure.
Mm-hmm.
It's like my original plan, the original job that I was there with, failed, but by being there, it allowed me to recognize this other potential, this other thing, which became bigger than what could have ever imagined, basically. So it is interesting, right? That's from a filmmaker position. That's, I think, where you would hope that this, any documentary would like focus more on one. They focused on like one girl for a bit, and then they would move, and then they would come back, and even at times, and I mean, I speak Spanish and I understand Guarani and all that, and I'm like, all right, who is this? For a second, I was like, who's got the pigs? And I was like, oh, that's the guy at the very beginning that was building the instruments, and we hadn't seen him for like 20 or 30 minutes.
Right.
But yeah. Have you guys, does this remind you of any other documentaries out there in this style? Or I know,
I mean, sorry, I feel like it's pretty typical for like stories like this, where like there's someone in like a situation that they can't seem to get out of. A teacher comes in, like it's a story we've seen before. Especially like with that one teacher who taught the kids Romeo and Juliet, and they ended up turning that into a film, like an actual film adaptation. And like I feel like they went with a very like, this is what we know documentaries to be, and they just went with that and tried to get as much perspectives as they could in, and like, and if they were going to do that, like I feel like I would have liked to also hear more about like the bass player and the cello player and all that, because they had like, in the horns, like they didn't even show the horns that much, and that was like a big selling point too.
Yeah, so that's what again, because the documentary span it took 4+ years. I remember in the original clip that they showed, or the like teaser trailer, and it was between like 5 and 10 minutes. They showed the horns, they showed the flutes and stuff, and I don't know if the kids that first started when they started filming ended up leaving, and then they didn't get like new ones. That's the only thing I can imagine, was that some of the kids must have left or gone for a job, and so then they didn't end up using the original footage. That's the only, because clearly what they first showed on YouTube was more on the teacher and the guy building the instruments, and those kind of confessionals, and it was a confessionals of the kids, like a show and tell of their instruments, and you lost that in here, where other than the violin and very few of the instruments, you lost the kind of like more of a show and tell of who these kids are, right? And kind of like allow them to like be proud, right? Be pride. That's one thing I noticed. It was like they were very serious for almost the half of the documentary, right? Like not real whole lot of smiles until they like basically went to Brazil, which is just super powerful. I mean, again, I think, who was it, Steve saying like him, that he wasn't poor. It's like, I wasn't rich, but I was not poor, and I remember the first time I saw the ocean, right? Like that's huge. But and I was like 4, and I guess I went in and it was like salty water, and I was like, el agua pica. I was like, pica, pica, pica. Because like, in Paraguay, we don't have an ocean, so I had never like tasted salt water before, and I guess I took a mouthful. And so stuff like that was, I think, for me, it just brought so many memories of just like powerful moments.
Just to chime in on what you're saying, one of the things that I really enjoyed about the documentary was specifically like the dad of this of the one girl. I think her name was Ada. That he really wanted to, like, he was like collecting. It reminded me, not necessarily, I was like I guess also answering your question if I seen something similar. So I think I saw like a Vice like mini documentary on Cuba, and it was showing how basically like young teenagers will listen. They will go to the rooftop with a radio with like an antenna and try to get the feed from like the states, and that's how they would listen to like Biggie Smalls and stuff like that, and they will learn English and rapping that way. And him collecting like the magazines and going Jimi Hendrix and this and that, and the little girl like Megadeth, like out of any like all the things that exist in the world, she goes with Megadeth.
Metal is huge in Paraguay. I don't know what to tell you, man. Heavy metal is huge in Paraguay. Metallica and like I don't
But
know.
it's crazy. I think it was, but in a way, I think the way that they also got exposure to that, or maybe I'm wrong, it was through the landfill too. Because how did they find those magazines?
Yeah.
And I did see like a sign because after, but I can talk about that later. After I just became a stalker, I'm like following them on Instagram. I got their website, their Twitter, like everything. I became like obsessed about them, and they're still going at it, which is crazy. During a pandemic, and I basically I saw a sign of one of the girls because she's now like doing also big things. She has like her own like product line. She's in a book and a bunch of stuff, and it said like the world sends us trash and we give them back music, which I thought that was amazing. But yeah, that's all I gotta say.
Yeah. You mentioned something. Oh, just on the music, man. Man, when I was in Paraguay and people, found out that I spoke English or that I was, my mom's American, people would like sing me Metallica lyrics, and sometimes they'd be like, "What does this mean?" And like they had it memorized, in very choppy English, but like yeah. So and I don't know if it's because the music is you can follow the music, you can headbang, and you don't have to like sing along, right? And that's the only thing I can kind of think of is like you can enjoy the music and not necessarily have to know the lyrics themselves. But yeah, heavy metal is huge in Paraguay. Then were you guys gonna say something, Michaela or JP on no?
Is like I haven't seen any documentary that's like this. If anything, like it kind of this is so dumb because we even like as we were discussing it, like I thought about it as like how we wish that we focused more on the kids. For some reason, my brain went to House of Rock, and I was like, or no, School of Rock, and I was like that's pretty much the only other thing close to what I could compare this one to. But that's me being silly. But yeah, that they focused more on the kids. I mean, we did get to see the three kids, the girl, the best friend, and the drummer who had that ear problem, like. But yeah, like it's weird because you could tell like if they had more time or if the movie didn't like literally steered its own wheel, like we probably would have seen more of like what it was originally gonna be instead of like what it accidentally created.
Yeah. I mean, and it also like was interesting how we also got to see their skill level develop too. Yeah. Like I'm very glad that they showed that. Like they didn't just like instantly they were like great. Like they had to learn to become good and like not be frustrated, like move past
but also about that, like I wish they would have spent a little bit more time there. Like really showing the process of it. Because even that to me seemed a little fast.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and again, but what do you do, right? Like when you do kind of blow up, right? And that's this weird thing where like they blew up, they won international, but I was like the majority of them, if not all of them, are still living there, right? So it's like we now know of them, Michael Strahan knows of them, but they're still there, right? Like they can go and tour with Metallica and do all these shows, but at the end of the day, that's what. And I thought they were also going to jump into it a little bit more, because the girl was like, I feel like I'm dreaming, and at some point, like you got to wake up, right? And then they kind of jumped into the flooding and stuff like that. But I guess they try to end it on a high note, on a happy note, but they haven't really like fully, they didn't kind of explain, that the teacher was trying to focus, like, it's not just about practicing and getting the instrument ready for when you go to a new country and all that, but you got to get yourself ready, right? Like, I thought the teacher was just on a whole nother level. It's like, you could tell like how much he cares, right? And you have to when you're dealing with that, right? And so I wish there would be a little more touching base on like, hey, these kids are getting kind of famous in the international world, in the recycling world, conservationism, but like, what are they still having to deal and struggle with at home, right? So I also wish they would have spent a little more time. There is a documentary. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I guess not. But it's a Brazilian artist, a painter, and he goes to a landfill in Brazil, which might be the largest landfill in the world, if not definitely of all of the Americas. And he uses trash to create like paintings and stuff like that. So very similar, only that again, like their budget, he's already a renowned like artist in New York and all that, so he was able to, like, that documentary is also really good. And they focus also on the part of like they were able to they would pay people to help them for the photo shoot with the trash and all that, and then they had to come to the realization of like, all right, we're now paying them daily, and they don't have to go and scavenge through the trash and all that. When we're done with this documentary, when we're done with this art expo, and we leave, they still gotta stay here. How is that gonna affect them?
Right.
And because I had seen that documentary before, I was hoping that it was gonna kind of show that as well. Like, it's so great and dandy that they've gone and played with Megadeth, they've gone to Europe and the US and Canada and Mexico and all that, but it's like they gotta go back home, right? And I was like, like, it's hard. It's a tough place to live, to come from, and with a pandemic, and like you said, Michaela, like the fire that happened and all that, like, it's there's been a lot of unrest also currently, with a lot of protests and all that going on. So it's just like but that again, it's like when you're trying to be uplifting, you want to show the very best, and that's
I think that's like the line that this had to play.
right.
It was like, how far is too far before it becomes just like not exploitative, but
Right.
exploitative.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that like all the moms watching this like come up seeing this is a good thing.
Yeah.
But like you don't want to show them exactly how rough it really is.
Yeah. This, I think, because the teacher there is from, I mean, he's not from Cateura, but like all the people working there are all Paraguayans, right? So it wasn't like a huge international crew decided to go and we're going to film it. It was very local, right? And I think and like Steve's saying that he's following them and they still have their website going and stuff like that. They're still taking donations. It's like, that also shows the difference of some of these other places where international crews have gone and have shown. It's kind of like, let me show you this other life. Let me take you and show you what, if you were born in a different place, you could maybe have had. And I show you how sweet that could be, and now I'm gonna throw you back in. But I think the fact that they were all from Paraguay and all from that neighborhood, it makes it a little easier to come back, right? Because then you know the struggle. And then I thought it was very nice and sweet seeing the older girls then kind of teaching younger girls to play the violin and stuff like that. I lost my. Okay, it is a documentary. It is kind of sad, but I will ask. I have two questions. One was for the non-Spanish speakers. How was the subtitles? Because I watched it with no subtitles. And two, do you have a favorite person or moment in the documentary? Like like I guess a scene, even though it's real life, right? But yeah.
So, as a half Spanish speaker, much like everything that with the little Spanish I do know of, like, and this is with every film, doesn't matter, the translation will always be simplified for American viewers or like English speaking viewers, because even though some words have bigger meaning, you can't exactly put that in a translation. It also didn't help that I don't know if it was the streaming service that we were using, but the captions actually were delayed by like 5 seconds.
Ooh.
Second half of the movie. So it was almost weird. Like my brain literally had to say, okay, just listen to what they have to say, because the captions are totally off right now, so I can't rely on that. So I guess, how do you feel about that second half of that?
I mean, I don't think it bugged me as much as it bugged you.
Yeah.
You know, because I got what was going on.
Gotcha.
You know?
I guess it was just my brain like trying to
But that's
multitask.
like a pet peeve of yours too. Like anything that makes your brain work harder than it has to, you're just like,
Right.
Why?
But like, did you feel like the translations were like, because you could even you who don't speak or understand Spanish, like, no, like that's not what I meant. But like, no, because like it's kind of like the thing where like they're talking and like you could tell that they're saying a lot more than what it's saying on the bottom.
Obviously.
Yeah, like,
obviously. I mean, but like since I really don't comprehend, I have to base my entire opinion off of what I see.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I have a feeling that because of that, I did miss some of the emotional depths of the children. And, you know, like I think that there's a level that I was missing. And I'll admit that.
The one they did, I thought there was going to be more Guarani in it, but it really was only when the teacher was looking for the dad to go to sign all the paperwork that that whole scene of him like looking and talking to the people and on the phone, that all was in Guarani. So but I thought there were, other than throughout it, it was words here and there in Guarani. They clearly, and I think that also changed. Clearly, I think once they kind of got viral and blew up, I think more of a effort of like, let's try and just speak Spanish, you know, and you know, if we're going to make a documentary, and it's going to be easier to kind of sell it and promote it around if we don't, you know, have to translate even for Spanish speakers because of Guarani being an indigenous language. So
that's like, now that you brought it up, I like comparing this to 7 Boxes, right?
yeah.
That one, I'll admit, I was having trouble just listening to that, but it was easier because it was more just straight Spanish than the other vernacular. So yeah, I just didn't even realize until right now.
Nice. Steve, maybe we lost Steve because it's been on you guys. Oh, there you are.
What? No, I'm here. What are you talking about?
Any issues with the translation for you? Or, I mean, tu español
I mean, mainly
y Guarani, ¿cómo está?
I mean, mainly the Guarani part, but it was short. It wasn't like the entire thing. It was, but when that time came, that's when my ears went like, "What the fuck?" Like I had no idea. what was going on, because he just like that, like the teacher dude.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that caught me off guard. I read the subtitles and I kept them, but the rest, I mean, because there's subtitles, like my eyes get drawn to it, but I was just going by what they were saying because I understand and speak perfect Espanol.
Yeah, and that's I mean, and that's how it is there, right? It's kind of like if you're in certain parts of the city. Well, in Asunción, you can basically Spanish, but if you go out in the countryside or certain places or surrounding that area, like if you're looking for certain things, it's gonna be much quicker if you just go full into Guarani. So I like all that to me. It's just like, yeah, that's what you do. Especially when I'm traveling with my dad or whatever. It's like I'm not fluent. I can understand that. I do like Spanglish, but with Guarani. But yeah, it's like as soon as you get outside of the city, and it's like you're asking for directions. He was asking for directions, and so it's almost like I was by that street. There's that tree, or there's this, like just very much like just like trying to get coordinates of where this person is supposed to be. Where clearly there are no street signs. But yeah, so we ended up talking more about the translation and stuff. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but one of the moms, or actually no, I think it was the wife of the guy who created the instruments, but also others, the grammar, the Spanish grammar was off, right? And that kind of also shows you that some of them, especially the parents, grew up probably just speaking Guarani and not really speaking Spanish, or not finishing their education, which is something that would happen a lot. And so the Spanish grammar is not correct or not perfect, because they don't necessarily. So their Spanish in that sense ends up being more simplified, because they have to try and speak completely 100% in Spanish if they're doing an interview or something like that. So yeah. So now, a favorite person there, or favorite scene that you guys had.
I think, like, for me, like, it had to be when the girl met with one of the members of Megadeth, because like you could tell it was such a genuine, like, just shock. Well, it's weird because like everyone say shock isn't the right word either, because she knew that he was coming, right? But even like the whole like just the pure joy of, like, you could tell that she could barely contain herself, and like that was probably like the most like joy that you saw in the whole film. Like, not saying that these were like sad children, like, yeah, like they're having a rough time where they're at, but none of them I would say like is a depressed child or just like sad. But to see like just someone who, like, let's be honest, is a complete stranger, but like I feel like we could all like kind of relate to that. Like, I know if I met my like fucking hero or
You'd
whatever,
run away.
I'd run away. I would not cry in front of them. I would just straight up like not even be worthy to grace their presence. And like for him, and you could tell that he's also having a good time too, and he's legit like trying to help out these kids, and to even like take them back to the U.S. and like to do, or was it Canada? Were they
U.S.
in the U.S. to do a performance? Like, even then you could tell like they were just having like a fucking ball. They're like, oh my god, like we're gonna perform here at this concert, and the one guy like gave the drummer his pedal, which is like like it probably means nothing to the guy. They probably have a bunch like in their trailer or whatever, but like that might be the only thing that's not made out of trash that they own now, is that the drummer's pedal.
Yeah. I think my favorite parts was just like watching how they made the instruments, like watching the carpenter like do his work and how much that meant to him. Like that one scene where he's like making or like fixing a violin for a little kid, and he keeps saying that he likes the fact that like that's what he's known for. It's like the fact that he makes the elephant, like that's what the kids
Yeah.
see him. Like, I think that was my favorite
And
part.
even the little kids at the end of the movie, like the younger ones, they refer him as a Don, which is kind of like,
Yeah.
they're like, that's how big of a guy he is. Like, oh my gosh, like it's the guy who makes the stuff.
Yeah.
All right. And you, Steve?
I was trying, like, I was literally like taking my time because I wanted to think, but the one that my brain went default, piggybacking off JP, was made when they were, well, actually, that and Alley. But first, let me talk about this one. So when they were at that mega death concert and they were doing the rehearsals, I was just like, oh, how is this gonna go? like this. These are two opposite things, but it went. I mean, they just held the same note over and over again.
Right.
But it was still like really cool to just see the mixture of it, and actually got recognition, gave him a shout out and everything,
Yeah.
and like that was like a moment to me. And then the very end, the reason I like it is because first, I'm a huge fan of classical music. I use that a lot to concentrate and study and stuff like that. But the fact that they are doing this in front of this audience that's like in a classical music environment and with the actual instruments made out of trash is like beautiful. It's like poetry in motion to me. So
Nice. I will add on the meeting the guy from, I know, like, the bassist from Megadeth, whatever his name is. What blew my mind there, like, he went to their homes. Like, a lot of times you've seen when there is that kind of interaction or whatever, you meet somewhere, I don't know, you go downtown, you go down to a concert hall or something. He went to their house. He went to their schools. Like, this international music star, like, was like, I'll go to the slums.
From Facebook.
Yeah. I mean, clearly there was more than just, I don't think it was just like, I like your picture, let me slide into your DMs. All right, I'm coming to your house. I think there was a little more interaction than that. But just like showing up, like, yeah, that, how is that not a dream, right?
Yeah.
Just to think like, oh, if somebody, is like, if Robin Williams comes and knocks on my door right now, first I'd be like, oh shit, zombie. But like, you wouldn't expect someone like that to like show up to your house, right? And so that was really powerful for sure. And yeah, the little kids, like, everyone seeing, and the parents seeing like the power that can come from being a musician, and just kids wanting, hey, could you make a violin? Like, could you do something? And one of the things he gets during the flood, or the first thing he starts to do, is like, let me make sure I still have materials to make instruments, But yeah, so to finish, for final thoughts, I want you to kind of also think of a message. Like, is there a message that stood out to you that maybe you can use to motivate you? Because the one that I saw that I was like, oh wow, like, I don't know if it was during the TED talk that the teacher had or whatever, but he was, and he said it, I think, a couple different ways, but it was, if it's in English, I think it's like, just because you have nothing doesn't mean that you have to do nothing. It's something along that line. I thought that's kind of what I'll take out of this movie, and just like as motivation, like, don't use the fact that you have nothing as an excuse to not do anything, right? Maybe that makes better in English. But yeah, so that's kind of my going into the final thought for me, is just being able to take, trash, and just like, we should be able to say that with anything in our life, of like, if you don't allow nothing to stop you from doing something. And I would recommend this movie to anyone. I think it's really powerful. Again, technically and artistically from a filmmaker point of view, it's very rough, but just the story that it's able to tell, I think, is it should be seen more and recommended more because, yeah, it's very powerful. All right, Steve, would you like to share your final thoughts and maybe a message that you're taking away?
I'm ready. So, final thoughts. This documentary is really great. Like Dino was saying, from the actual storytelling documentary standpoint, it's not necessarily the best when compared to other great documentaries are there as far as like the structure and everything. And there's not a clear focus. But I do like the story. I do like the message. I do like one of the messages that I definitely got is that I would rather come from struggle because it makes you be creative and use your ingenuity. And even though it is tough, there are brighter days. And another thing that I took out of this documentary is that the speed of sound travels way faster than anything. Like music and all that literally takes you places because they went from there, which I'm sure, like Dino said, there's a lot of them that still live there, but they got into travel and they're still traveling. Like literally, I was literally looking at their Instagram and everything. And during the pandemic, they've been in Spain and Amsterdam and like a bunch of different places. It's really cool just to see that it's continuing, it's actually growing. Some of the kids are creating like their own products and stuff, and they're actually creating more. They're passing it, they're paying it forward. They're also teaching the younger generation to basically keep that tradition. And in a way, at least that little community is slowly building in a way its own infrastructure, even though it's challenging. It's bringing awareness to it. And that's one thing that I appreciate about this documentary. And I feel like kids in either elementary school, maybe middle school, should watch this. I think the future of education has to be with video learning and like YouTube and stuff like that. And documentaries are an extremely great tool for learning. And I just feel like it should be in schools. But that's me. And that's my final thoughts.
Yeah. I feel like my final thoughts, like it's just it's an inspiring movie. It's it's rather simple, but like it's just inspiring. Just like, if anything, it's literally just a feel good film. It has an inspiring message. It has a happy ending, and from what I'm hearing from most of you guys, like it turns out they're actually doing quite well, even with new and recent struggles. And I think, like, for me, is like I don't remember her name, but the one girl that they focused on a lot, where like I guess no matter what, as long as you have passion, then it will like overcome anything. Because in the beginning of the film, she's frustrated because she's not getting the exact tempo that the teacher wants. But then when things start to go right and stuff, she's even now teaching the little kids. Like she's teaching the little kids how to do the music, and she even tells us, the audience, that like, I know, like, even after this, like whatever I'm going to get into, it's going to be in a profession based on music. Like she knows that she's going to be a musician forever, and like her passing on what she's learning and what she knows to the little kids. Like, if anything, that kind of also, like, even if she turns out to be wrong and she does something other than music, what she taught those kids is going to keep on going. His passion, it'll persevere.
Final thoughts. Well, like I think that it's a very simplistic documentary, but it doesn't need like trimmings or anything. It tells the story that it needs to tell. I mean, what you get out of it is they managed to make trash sound like an actual violin. Like it does, like their instruments don't sound different. and they're playable. So it doesn't matter where you're from or like where you come from. Like you can still be like, it doesn't matter what you're made of. You're still got worth. You still have value. You can still be something beautiful.
You can shine no matter what you're made of.
Yeah.
Robots.
Thank you, JP.
All right, nice. And I would just finish that after they got, known throughout the world, other countries where there are big landfills started doing programs like this for kids and music. So again, it's this kind of pay it forward or just inspiring other people to be like, hey, we can also do this, right? So yeah, I guess that's it for Landfill Harmonic. And I'll pass it on to Steve.
Me?
Yeah, for next week, right?
Yeah, next week it is Michaela's turn. What we got, Michaela?
We're gonna be watching Hoop Dreams.
Hoop what?
Hoop, there it is.
So that's the next documentary, Hoop Dreams. I am very surprised by this pick. I would not be expecting it from Michaela, but we're watching Hoop Dreams for Michaela. What?
There you go. No, she's a trailblazer. She doesn't follow any norms,
No, there you go. There you go. Anywho, for Michaela, JP, Don Dino, and Steve, we'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.
Look at this.
Hey, I'm JP Cerno. Thank you for watching Oye Dimelo Network. Please click here for additional videos and don't forget to subscribe. That's our new theme song.